Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the PROSPEX Energy 2020 Results Portfolio Insight Investor Presentation. Throughout this presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode, and there's currently a poll on your screen, and if you would give that your kind attention, we would be most grateful. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Please just simply type in your question and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. These will be available on your Investor Meet Company dashboard, and again, we'll send you an email to notify you when they're ready for your review. I'd also like to remind you that this presentation is being recorded. I'd now like to hand over to Edward Dawson, CEO from PROSPEX MG. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for everyone who's taken the time today to dial in on a lovely British summer day. This is the second time we've used this platform, and we hope it's informative to those on the call. We will run through a variant of our usual company presentation, and we hope to give insight to prospective shareholders, further insight to current shareholders, and we also have Carlos Venturini on the line, so we're going to look at some of the assets in a technical detail as well. PROSPEX is an AIM investment company focusing on gas assets in Europe. We've looked at a huge number of potential transactions over the years, but focusing on a clean energy portfolio, which is clearly still got plenty of run room as the transition fuel of Europe. We have primarily two assets, one in Italy and one in Spain. The idea is that both the assets have significant follow-on opportunity from the sales, and we're looking also at non-organic growth of projects of a similar nature that make strategic sense to bolt on or increase stakes in. As a team, we are highly experienced. We've acted in public and private arenas. My last two companies were sold to industry on the back of high quality technical work done by the team. We've had a period following drilling success in 2018 in Italy, and then the acquisition of the El Romeral project, of waiting for the portfolio to mature. I'm pleased to say, we have a clean site now to positive cash flow in 2022. That will come primarily from Italy. As I've mentioned, the two primary projects will supply the foundations for a strong growth strategy in Europe. I wish to spend a bit of time on the financial highlights of 2020, which we announced a couple of weeks ago. We have our AGM coming up, and I want to give some insight to people on that. We ended financial year with net assets of 5.7 million, which provides significant asset backing to our current share price. As an investment company, we have to value our assets for the accounts at full year and the half year, and the fair value of the investments was 5.4 million. That is made up of equity investments in the direct and controlled subsidiaries. We don't consolidate our accounts, and loans to those companies. Currently, we have Spain marked at a cost. We feel that is a prudent approach, whilst we like the El Romeral asset and the Tesorillo asset. At this stage, they're still at cost. Italy provides significant value and the majority of the value of the balance sheet. We use a methodology set out in CPR, which uses a composite forward curve. It's in fact based on Dutch gas prices with a premium to represent the historic nature of Italian gas prices being slightly higher than Dutch, but there's a futures market in Dutch gas prices. We had a small down valuation in the 2020 financials. This was primarily, again, at Selva, and gas prices had fallen quite a bit during the year with COVID. There was some recovery. I'm pleased to say that those gas prices actually so far in 2021 have gone up 50%, and this will actually, for those who like to crank numbers, this will lead to a significant revaluation at the half year. People can look at the CPR and they can see that gas prices are sort of 10% higher than then. So they've gas prices historically, have come off 2019, had a low 2020, and recovered in 2021. Also looking at, I think the other key number for an AIM listed company is admin expenses. There was an 11% reduction in 2020. That does not include, does include 100,000 or circa 100,000 of non-cash items. So actually a bigger fall from 2019 to 2020 than the headline numbers suggest. Also, people look at it and say, well, actually, they're still quite high. There's only a small group of you. The way we're structured, we actually recover a significant number of those costs from said subtenants of an office, partners, or even a little bit of third-party consultancy. Also, administrative expenses captures new ventures expenditure. These costs are important and a key bit of new venture work. The El Romeral project is now sitting in Taba, but it was a project that was sourced by the PROSPEX team, and ultimately it was found a home in Taba, and Warigo, our partners, contributed to those costs after the deal was done. So often, they're really investment costs, they should be capitalized. I can understand that argument, but accounting practices don't allow us to do that. And again, we can already see that costs in 2021 will be lower than 2020. So I hope that provides some insight to the financials. I'm now going to hand over to Carlos to talk through the Italian and Spanish assets.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all listening. I'm going to run quickly through Italy first. For those that haven't seen the asset in the past, it is located between Milan and the Adriatic coast in northern Italy, in a traditionally very well known and prolific gas basin called the Po Basin, where so far there have been drilled more than 5,000 wells since the 40s. We initially took interest in the block in October 2017, acquiring 17% working interest. The rest is being held by other partners and the operator PVE with 63%. And the area was studied before. We had some seismic data, additional G&G, geology and geophysics maturation of the prospect was done, and eventually a well was drilled, Potere Mayar 1 directional, in December 2017. and it was confirmed as a gas discovery in January 2019 in the same kind of reservoir sands that were producing historically in the whole region. So we are content with the fact that around the discovery there are additional prospectivity. The net today in terms of reserves and resources for the whole proven and probable reserves, the 2P are 13.4 BCF, net to prospect is 2.3. There is an additional bigger number for contingent resources and even prospective resources, of course. So the production is according to what we've been, working together with the operator, and the operator in the first place is expected by 2022. In this slide, very quickly, we can say that the steps to get into production have most of them been completed from number 1 to 6 in the list. We are at between number 4 and possibly number 5 now. It's an intergovernment agreement. Once the environmental impact assessment has been approved, like in step 3 by the state authority, there is another further step by the regional authority that has its own environmental survey. They need to agree, and this is what they are conducting now. After that, the concession, final production concession will be granted, and further work will be implemented on the ground to install the production facilities, which is very reduced in terms of time and possibly also cost. It has been observed quite a strong flow rate. If you remember in the first slide here on the top right hand, this is one of the flow test evidences with a special burner that has been adapted to the test of the well. Both there are two reservoirs that are traditionally producing there. They, in this case, were tested at more than 150,000 standard cubic meters per day. The plant could be or will be designed to handle these 150, to be cautious with the production and not to overrun. And the budget is based on conservative number of 100,000 standard cubic meters a day. And I left this to Ed now to talk about what it means in terms of money.
Yeah. Thanks, Carlos. So, as production for us in Selva is key. 100,000 cubic meters a day net to us on an annualized basis is around just over about 1.4 million euros. And in the first couple of years, we'll pay very little tax because of the historic expenditure, and the operating cost is relatively low. At CPR prices, 20 cents per standard cubic meter of gas. As I say, that's about 1.4 million net to us. If we use today's current prices and we're actually produced capacity, we would go to actually 2.4 million euros. So highly cash generative to us. And in terms of getting it on production, we continue to talk to a number of debt providers. We firmly believe that we can put this thing on production using debt financing. Why do I say this? Well, the capital cost is repaid in sort of circa 7 months, and actually, in terms of surety to a lender, it's a very short time frame, and actually the quantum of gas required to be depleted from the reservoir is, again, circa less than 5% of the reserves. So really at the very conservative end of projects. There's no huge upfront capital costs. It's not offshore, and it's a mature, well-known reservoir. hand you back to Carlos to speak through some assets in Spain.
It somehow followed the path we were determined to follow in search of gas assets that meet particular conditions from the geological standpoint, which are that they are relatively shallow and bordering alpine chains in 4 deep situations, which is a basin in front of chains. In this case, we are talking about southern Spain. Everyone knows Granada and Sierra Nevada and all this mountain chain there. Well, just beside of that mountain chain to the north, there is a basin. It's called the Guadalquivir Basin that ends up in the Atlantic. And then this basin has been historically, since the 50s, explored for relatively shallow gas, very similar to Italy, but probably half of the depth. I'm talking about depth of reservoirs of 700 meters. And then in the area we are discussing, which are 3 concessions called Romeral 1, Romeral 2, and Romeral 3, were originally explored since '83 by Chevron, and then together with Repsol until another local company bought them. It was in production, 3 wells were in production, and they still are. And the area is basically traversed by the national gas grid, it's called Gas, and smaller distribution pipes. So there is no need to infrastructure to add gas production in the permits. There is also a power station only used 78% of its capacity, just simply because we need to add more gas production from other wells that we are meant to be drilling very soon, hopefully. We have actually a bit more than 11, but very low risk prospects that will provide partly the flow necessary to top up the consumption of the power station and the production of electricity, and then the rest will be channeled or monetized through the use of the Enagas national pipe or gas line. The area has, you see very faint lines crisscrossing the area. These are seismic data that have been acquired in the past and being processed to AVO stage, which is a specific type of analysis to detect gas from the seismic. And we think, we have a very good insight of the basin. It's below risk and there's no further significant exploration effort to make than the drilling, which is part of the things that are going to be done next year. And this is just to portray what we are talking about. This is from sea level, so we need to add about 200 meters to this depth. So the reservoir typically is like lenses that are representing channels, actually, and they are at 650, 700 meters depth. So relatively, and there is no water influx, no production of sand, very simple, very novel reservoirs with a very high porosity and good production. A well here could produce easily 20,000 to 50,000 meters cubed a day. You see significantly less than what is Italy, but in stable and in a long-term basis. And finally, to give a further insight on the eastern side of the blocks, this is one of the prospects that is very mature to be ready and drilled. And this is the, let's say, the rendering of the seismic, which shows effectively that because of the velocity here, we are talking about 700 meters roughly. And this is how it's seen. And this particular case has already the well part ready to drill, so we are proceeding with the permitting through Tarba in Spain. I finish here, I guess.
Yeah. So just as Carlos highlighted, there are 11 prospects been identified on the high quality seismic that Carl just showed you. So there was plenty of follow-on drilling here. The plan is to get the plant back up to full utilization, and we believe that can be done very easily, effectively, depending on how well the drilling goes. We believe that one, or if not two wells could get the plant back onto full production. That for us equates to historic gas prices and electricity prices. That equated to a total revenue of 4.2 million and effectively just under 2 million after tax. So a good chunk of change again for the company. As Carlos intimated, we could, once the power station was back on to full capacity, we would look to sell gas directly into the grid. We are doing a number of things whilst waiting for the permitting of these new wells. There is an opportunity to increase the time that the plant runs. We bought the plant from the Spanish utility called Naturgy. They were effectively running it 16 hours a day, 5 days a week. So we've gone through an exercise of looking to increase that. We can do that through technology, updating the control systems, and increasing the staff. We also have been looking at the 3 wells that are producing there today. Can we safely produce and further quicken the depletion of the reservoir? So those sort of studies are ongoing. We've now run the plant on several occasions for 40 plus hours in one go. They look positive. And as I say, we've been talking about upgrading the plant and further automation. A number of studies have been undertaken as well, because at one stage they had 5 wells producing, only producing for 3 today. Can we, get production up by possibly going into one of the other wells? That is still being looked at by the Taba technical team, but we are getting positive noise from them, and we'd look to, I'm sure the partnership would look to do something very soon. Also, obviously, we have Tesorillo project. This is further south on the southern coast, just around from Gibraltar. It's a very interesting project in terms of size. It was drilled in the 50s. Gas came to surface. It's been through a number of operators' hands, including Repsol. Everyone's had a strong technical interest in it. I suppose originally there was no infrastructure or no gas market. We now have the Maghreb pipeline coming across the block. However, it is very much a high-risk asset, and the El Romeral transaction and the Romeral permitting has taken up a lot of the time of the team. So we think we are likely to drill further wells at El Romeral before here. But it's certainly a project of interest, and we'll see where it goes. For those who look at the company, they'll know our partner is Warrego, an Australian group, who have just had a big drilling campaign in Australia and found some very large gas accumulation of this order of magnitude. So it is of interest of all parties. This is a summary of our reserves and resources. As you can see, in terms of reserves, we have a 2.5 BCF, largely attributed to Italy. The net contingent resources come from some from Spain. We've also Selva, so that's in the Podolina license, is we have some contingent resources assigned to Selva North and Selva South. These are exactly the same play as what was already being discovered at Selva. The Podolina license also has upside for us in terms of Selva East is a project that we really quite like. It's probably double the size of Selva, and we, the partnership would be the next drill target there. The net perspective is dominated by Tesorillo, but it doesn't necessarily represent the risk in terms of the Tesorillo is very large numbers, but I said high risk. At El Romeral, we've got a lot of prospective resources, 45 BCF net to us, but the CPR writers are very comfortable with what they see technically and have assigned those as very low risk, which is a chance of success of over 75%. So it's no guarantee, but in terms of our industry, that they're very high numbers. So outlook for the next year, the partnership is in Spain has started the permitting process with around MRL. Obviously, we had the waited for, and it took, unfortunately, longer than we possibly hoped, was the approval of the transfer, and obviously now the campaign. Electricity production, again, it's worth highlighting. We've historically had an underlying price of around 50 euro cents a megawatt hour in Spain. That's effectively double that at the moment. We've spent most of the year in the 80s, 90s. It's gone over 100 this week. So this is really helping Taba in the short term. It's generating, plenty of cash. It means that, we don't have to contribute to it. I don't expect PROSPEX to receive any of that cash back at the moment, but it enables, the permitting process to move ahead. And as I say, they're looking at a number of, possibly well intervention to, again, uplift production there. So, that looks good. Tesorillo is not our priority moment in Spain. And finally, Italy. Carlos is set out in some detail where we are in the permitting process. Po Valley, the operator, has a good working relationship with the ministry. We were bogged down with environmental approvals. People will know that there was a change of government in February, and that came through with a new environmental minister who was a technocrat. Within 2 weeks, signed the paperwork, and we've moved to the next stage. So Po Valley have been pretty good on their timetables, and we're looking for another major step forward in the next coming weeks, which will then get us onto cash flow positive in early 2022. As a company, we currently do not have a commitment to net carbon neutral. It's certainly something that we've discussed internally, and we see roadway for doing that. It's important, certainly in Tabo is very conscious of it, and is again looking at a number of projects, such as the actual plant consumes electricity when it's not generating. It has lights on and things like that, and so it's looking at a number of projects to get that to net neutral. Solar panels. There's lots of solar in that part of the world. It's even knows that it sounds like there's a very large local pig farm might need to do something with its waste. So there's that sort of element of things. But as a group today, we don't actually produce much carbon, and we would look to offset it in due course. But when we're generating significant cash flow. So production is key, and it's fundamentally Selva will change that. All our projects have multiple following opportunities with Selva North, Selva South, and we've gone through the prospects of in Aloma. So I'd like to thank people for their time today. We've clearly sitting on some very strong assets. I think it's important for the company that we achieve cash flow positive and strong cash flow. That Selva gives us a very strong foundation to the company. That we think that will help to re-rate the company. The portfolio is important. We're multi-country, multi-jurisdiction, and as we keep pointing out, there are plenty of opportunities in both licenses. We did not go into those on the basis of here's a single thing and that's it for us. We want to move on, so that's good. Climate change is important for the UK. It's important for the world. It's certainly important for Europe. We've seen that the European countries are going at things in slightly their own pace. I would say Italy is ahead of most of the countries. We've seen obviously some progress in Spain, and certainly in terms of progress, having gone through some of the things in Italy, we think that will mean there's less debate. They put a moratorium on exploration, and that's coming to an end. So that's good for the industry as a whole. It should be noted that actually our follow-on opportunities are likely to be in the production permit area, so it wouldn't fall under exploration as well. We do have, finally, a strong management team who's very good at dealing with industry partners. We've got access to a whole set of things, and in time we believe that the value will out in the portfolio. So I'd like to, at this stage, thank you for listening. I think Mark is going to open things up.
Absolutely. Edward, Carlos, thank you very much indeed for updating investors this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. But just while the company take a few moments to review those questions submitted already, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, be accessible via your Investor Meet Company dashboard, and we'll send you an email when they're ready for your review. I'd also like to remind you that feedback is important to the company, and immediately after the presentation's ended, you'll be redirected for the opportunity to provide feedback in order that the company can better understand your views and expectations. Edward, Carlos, obviously, if I could ask you just to open up the Q&A tab, it's on the right-hand side. You'll see a number of questions have now started to populate themselves. Perhaps I could hand back to you. If I could ask you to read out the question and give a response where it's appropriate to do so, that'd be great, and I'll pick up from you at the end.
So, Mark, you're going to have to give me a nudge of how to find it.
Okay, so on the right-hand side of your screen, can you see the Q&A polls tab? If not, is there a blue button on the right-hand side at the bottom? There is. Click on the blue button. Yeah, no, that's perfect. And then the second one in says Q&A. And then if you would be so kind as just to read out the question and give a response, that'd be fantastic.
Thank you.
Have you got those there, Edward? You can see them.
Yes.
There's quite a few. There's a lot to read through, so apologies. So there you go.
Okay. So we'll start at the top. Do you see admin expenses reducing over time? Yes, they've clearly reduced from 2019 into 20, and we can see them again reducing in 2021. We have, a core team of that we can look at projects in detail internally. So that's always been key for us, is to have a business development side of things. Again, long term, we do have this ambition of being an operating company, and again, that might alter the cost base slightly. But again, at that stage, it's we will have hopefully significant revenue, etc. I think you have great assets, but given the market cap, how do you look to build a company with an existing balance sheet? The assets will allow for us to, I believe, will allow us to borrow against. So we can put in on development. Development itself will, I believe, lead to a re-rating, and also give us significant, cash flow for us to make discretionary expenditure, which we'll hope will be beneficial for the shareholders, whether that's be more wells, etc., that type of thing. I'm just reading the next question. Over the last year, the market conditions have been perfect for deals to bring in cash generating assets to cover G&A. Why have no deals been made? If you look at the portfolio today, there is assets that are generating cash. They are generating El Romeral. We knew that cash would be useful for Taba whilst it goes through the permitting space. The other key asset, a significant asset on the balance sheet, is Selva. That is will generate sort of cash, that you talk about. The decision was to get to cash flow positive without bringing in extra assets that actually do take significant time, and cost in due diligence, and we wanted to wait for Selva to produce the cash flow to do that. PROSPEX has suffered badly for a number of years, raising money to cover G&A. A number of people have obviously, looked at the company. The company has not just been bad at G&A. We clearly have spent money on getting into assets, and we've spent money on wells, and that's been important to us. Let me continue. Sorry. Just a few technical. David C. Please summarize the drilling plan and timescales for El Romeral. Yeah, the drilling plans for El Romeral are being discussed with our partners. Tarbar is putting various proposals together. What it has done is looking to permit a number of, I think it's in the region of 12 different wells, and that requires a whole a process. I think that will take probably 12, if not a bit longer, months to do that. But then there's a significant cost reduction if you drill multiple wells back to back. But again, with a clear date and line to drilling, and the low chance of a failure there because of the very low risk wells, we believe that again, that's easily financeable at the time, or even being funded from cash generation elsewhere in the portfolio. Yeah. Again, El Romeral. There's a question about the P1 and there's a question about the P1, P2 economics there. How are we going to mitigate this? The economics are based on no further additional production. If you take the further additional production on, the economics fundamentally change. You don't have early abandonment and such like. I'd also suggest that the current prices are significantly improved over and above what is there. Interesting enough, when the CPI was originally done, it envisaged production tailing off. That's not happened. And again, we'll produce more gas in a shorter time frame, again, improving the economics. The annual report mentions a 16% gross overriding royalty. Can you provide more details to shareholders on this? For the instance, the mechanism of it. We can do. There are a number. The original asset was sold to the utility with this overriding royalty on it. It was an overriding royalty on the exploration element of the portfolio. It wasn't on the wells that had been historically been drilled. People may know that the Tarba bought the asset for 750,000 euros. It was clearly, the royalty was clearly there. It's been there for many years. We've looked at this, that actually the royalty in itself has been useful, because we could clearly say to the vendor, well, there's a royalty here. We don't like the royalty. Therefore, the acquisition cost was negotiated on that basis. So that's how we've looked at the royalty, and I hope that gives some clarity on it. But that was priced into the transaction. Which asset are you most excited about, and why? If I'm asked to choose one asset, it's clearly, it must be Selva, because Selva is a key asset for us. We had very low cost entry into it, and it's going to produce significant cash flow for the company. With it came Selva East, Selva North, Selva South. So I think you have to focus on that. That becomes the Rubicon of crossing from cash consumption to cash generation. Tom W., what are the implications of significant increase in shareholders of a small number of key investors? and have had discussions with these investors as their future roles and objectives. It's quite clear that obviously from the TR1s that we have a number of reported large shareholders. There have been some correspondence with those people, mainly led by the company's chairman as one of his dedicated roles to do that.
Edward, I think you've pretty much covered most questions that have come through, unless I've missed any of this. Is there anything else that is there for you to address? And thank you firstly to all those investors that have taken the time to submit those questions. But Edward, if there are any others that perhaps need addressing, that's great. If not, if I could just ask you for a few closing remarks. And I know investor feedback is important, and we will shortly commence and redirect investors to provide you with their thoughts and expectations.
Well, thank you for people's time today. I think it's hopefully been a productive time for people. Since our last presentation like this, obviously we've had a number of changes and important changes. That is, we've taken control of the Albemarle project. Day-to-day operations are going well there, and we're very much helped. Electricity prices have gone up, but the team there are looking to fully, or not fully, but to utilise the plant more there. These do take some time. There's processes and things that need to go through, but importantly, very much so, we guided the next stage, or the operator guided the next stage of environmental permitting in the first quarter of 2021. That has happened. That has very much firmed up the timelines for getting cell on production, and that's key. So we are moving forward, and I think that will be good for all shareholders. And we've been pleased to do today. We were asked to do it, and hopefully people see that we are listening and engaging. Thank you.
Edward, Carlos, thank you once again so much for updating investors this afternoon. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as we'll now automatically redirect you for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the company can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the management team. On behalf of the management team of PROSPEX Energy, I would like to thank you very much for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's session, and good afternoon to you all. Thank you.